Joining us now to analyze today's headlines is Courtney Morris. She's an assistant professor of African American and Women's Studies at Penn State University. Hi, Courtney.
Hey, Sonali.
Yemen appears as though it's about to fall into the hands of Shia rebels. Yemeni President Abed Rabo Mansour Hadi has fled his palace late last night in the southern city of Aden before Houthi rebels began striking palace guards. Mr. Hadi has begged the United Nations to intervene. Yemen, the Arab world's poorest nation, had been touted as a model for U.S. counter-terrorism efforts. It's one of the nations where unmanned U.S. drones routinely drop airstrikes, a fact that has fueled the rebellion. Today's news of an imminent takeover by rebel groups comes just a week after U.S. military officials admitted to Congress that it has lost track of at least $500 million worth of arms and equipment given to Yemen since 2007. The U.S. already shut down its embassy in the capital Sana'a in February. Courtney, should we view Yemen as exactly the kind of disaster that results from the U.S.'s so-called war on terror?
Well, I would say that, yes, I think that that's true. I mean, I think that we're finding more and more that the counterterrorism strategies that the U.S. has adopted in the region has proven to be ineffective in cases like in countries like Yemen. And part of why I think that that is the case is because too often we've misunderstood or distorted the nature of the conflicts that are taking place in places like Yemen. You know, and Yemen is looking very likely to become another Iraq based on what we see taking place there right now. But I mean, if we look at the situation there, we have one where, you know, the Shiite Houthi rebels are fighting the Yemeni government. The Yemeni government is fighting Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which has significant territory in the country. And we also are seeing the Houthis and Al-Qaeda who are in conflict with one another, not to mention the presence of external actors like Saudi Arabia, who has been waging a not-so-secret war on the Houthi rebels there because they are afraid that they are receiving support from Iran. That has never, in fact, been proven to be the case, but there is a fear that the Shiite rebels are getting support from Iran, and so Saudi Arabia has involved itself in the conflict there. And so this, you know, this idea that we have that there's some magic bullet that's going to solve this crisis is really not rooted in anything real. There's not, you know, the idea that we're going to bring in more guns or more drones or consider putting boots on the ground like some conservatives in the United States have been calling for, that's going to resolve the crisis there is really just not realistic.
And we'll follow this story in the next day or two. An explosive investigative report just released by AP has found that much of the global supply of seafood, some of it winding up in U.S. stores and restaurants, is the product of slave labor. During a year-long investigation, AP interviewed fishermen who had been trafficked from Myanmar through Thailand into Indonesia. The fish that these impoverished Burmese men were forced to catch is sent back to Thailand, where it is mixed with seafood from all over the world for processing and export to other parts of Asia, as well as Europe and the United States. The trafficked men are living in horrific working conditions. According to AP, they described, quote, 20 to 22-hour shifts and unclean drinking water. Almost all said that they were kicked, beaten, or whipped with toxic stingray tails. If they complained or tried to rest, they were paid little or nothing. Courtney, the story is heartbreaking, but I'm wondering if you think that the overarching framework is a problem of a global food network that treats food as a commodity. I mean, it makes no sense that we eat fish caught as far away as Indonesia, does it?
No, I mean, it certainly makes the case for buying local, right? And that would be a possibility if our seafood market in the United States hadn't been so completely wrecked by petrochemical companies who have been destroying the local seafood market, particularly on the Gulf Coast, right? We can't even eat that shrimp anymore because of the BP oil spill. But I think that, you know, the fact is what this story really reveals is that most of us have no idea about the amount of abuse and suffering that makes our lives possible, from the food we eat to the clothes we wear to the cell phones that we use on a daily basis. We just have no understanding of what goes into the process of production and distribution of the goods that we consume. And I think that multinational corporations have really been very effective at obscuring that process and making it more difficult for the average consumer to really know what's going on in that chain of production and being able to intervene.
And then days after Texas Senator Ted Cruz announced his intention to run for president and generated reams of outrage and satire, a story has emerged that might have been written in The Onion. The senator from Texas, who has been one of the most vociferous opponents of the Affordable Care Act, has just announced he's signing up for its health insurance coverage. Cruz's wife Heidi had obtained health insurance for their family through her employer, Goldman Sachs. Now that she's taking a leave of absence, the Cruzes have nowhere to turn to for affordable health insurance, except Obamacare. Previously, Ted Cruz, who had pushed hard to defund Obamacare, described the law that he's now taking advantage of as, quote, lawlessness on a breathtaking scale. He still insists that a future Republican president will repeal it. Well, Courtney, I have no words. Do you?
I mean, this is such a crazy story, but Ted Cruz has really made a career out of engaging in these kinds of political stunts, and so I suppose we shouldn't be all that shocked. On the one hand, it just seems hypocritical and strange, but on the other hand, the cynic in me speculates that this is another kind of political stunt where he's probably going to attempt to prove that the system doesn't work by enrolling in it and being able to point systematically to all the shortcomings of the program. But if we're lucky, maybe he'll sign up and realize that Obamacare is awesome, and stop complaining about it and maybe start worrying about other political issues that are much more relevant than fighting against a law that has already been upheld multiple times by the court system.
Courtney, thanks as always for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye, Sonali.
Courtney Morris is an assistant professor of African American and Women's Studies at Penn State University. We'll be right back.